Hello, Ashley. I just got on. This is Rachel Gillette.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. We appreciate it. We're going to start going live, and I'll call the meeting to order, and then we'll probably do the public comment, and then I'll take you or some of the other items out of order to make sure that we get you first, and then we'll proceed with our the other items on our agenda. So thank you for joining us.
Here you are live.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is the Subcommittee on Rescheduling and Descheduling, December 1st, 2023 at 10 a.m. meeting. I'm going to start with roll call. If Member Hughes could confirm her presence.
I'm here.
Member Britton, can you confirm your presence?
I am in attendance.
And Member Bertolo.
I'm here.
And Member Klein is not with us yet. I don't know if he's going to join or not, but we do have a quorum, so we're going to proceed. Now we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment.
To provide public comment via Zoom, visit ccb.nv.gov, click the Public Meetings tab, and then select Commission Meetings. The link to the meeting can be found on today's agenda. You may also join by calling 669-444-9171. Enter webinar ID 849-052-06140, followed by passcode 039796. If you wish to provide public comment, click the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen if joining by Zoom. If joining by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. As a reminder, public comment is limited to 3 minutes. We will let you know when you have 30 seconds left of your time. Okay, first we have Catrice Saunders. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Catrice Saunders for the record. I'm a longtime patient and advocate in the state of Nevada. I've been affected by the war on drugs at a state level and a federal level. Systematically, the law was changed to exclude me. Just this past legislative session, I'm still having to wait to get my agent card again while I'm watching a billion-dollar industry thrive. MJ BizCon has been going on this week. It's a cruel reminder that during COVID, you guys mandated drive-throughs before real social justice and equity. It's a slap in the face for me making the state of Nevada millions of dollars in local business owners that I still have to advocate for social justice at a state level, let alone a federal level, because I still have a federal level for helping patients in the state of Nevada and helping build businesses and revenue. This should not be. I demand justice at this late date so that I can build generational wealth and begin to put my family back together. And also in regards to descheduling, rescheduling, it needs to be more mainstream so that everybody has access and that people don't have to give up their gun rights just because they're medical cannabis patients. That also needs to be discussed. And the fact that there's over 40,000 people still incarcerated and there's a thriving industry, there's really a disconnect from social justice and really compassion, more importantly. I always hear you guys first talk about taxes, but no one ever really speaks about social justice until 3 issues later. That should be at the forefront of people's mentality. Because I've been affected by the war on drugs at a state level and a federal level. That's on my mind, and my mission is people's freedom. The money will come because the plant can provide for everyone. And moving forward, I'd like to be more involved. So if anyone, I'll leave my email and you guys can contact me. This is Catrice Saunders. Thank you for your time today.
Next, we have Abad Pisa. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Abad Pisa for the record.
Through the course of hearing a lot of the different comments that have been made from several people, I've been able to gather that it seems like you guys are just over-regulating. As far as descheduling goes, you guys should be scheduling. And the reason being is because in the studies that have been done, seems to be something that is less dangerous than alcohol, which is at every corner store. This also is something that it seems to be less dangerous than cigarettes, which again is in every corner store. In the studies that have been done on alcohol and driving, cannabis has been proven to be less dangerous because the amounts of accidents did not rise in the states that legalized cannabis. Sorry, I'm a little sick, so my voice is cutting out a bit. And then in the studies that they've done on tobacco, when they did the studies on tobacco, they found out that the radiating of the tobacco is what causes cancer. So when you're irradiating the weed and then giving it to patients who are trying to fight for cancer, you're basically murdering them. So you guys are helping people kill people, and all because you guys don't want to allow people to grow the plant correctly. When I came into the industry, I was one of the very first people who was able to grow cannabis without using pesticides or anything like that and grow clean cannabis. We came out with clean test rates and even a 27% THC rate. So it can be done. The fact is that people either are lazy or just don't know how to do the correct steps to get the job done. And I strongly feel that if more people were able to get into the industry, then it would allow that to be seen on a broader scale.
Seconds.
I strongly feel you guys should definitely deschedule and stop over regulating this, let more people get in. Thank you.
If you wish to provide public comment, click the raise hand icon or dial *6. I'm sorry, *9 to raise your hand. Okay, caller with the last four numbers 2119. Please state your name before providing your comment. Dial *6 to unmute. Caller with the last four numbers 2119, dial *6 to unmute to begin your comment.
Greetings, good morning. For the record, my name is Timothy Eliado. I was calling. Hello, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, it's okay, because right. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Timothy Eliado for the record, and I'm calling on behalf just to show my support for completely decriminalization of cannabis, and basically to convey my my support for also basically creating a culture where skills and talent, basically is the forefront of what we're trying to achieve. And in summary, what I'm speaking about is, unfortunately, within the practices currently within the cultivation facilities, by enabling the radiation or whatever usage to remediate the cannabis, what we're initially doing is creating a culture that basically, cut corners for most part, and also we're basically creating a culture that enables the lack of skills to be the forefront. And the reason why this is really important is this. Unfortunately, lots of these cultivation facilities that are failing in terms of their microbial testing, heavy metals, whether it's pesticides, whatever the issue may be, there is always basically an underlying issue within the facility itself, and also the lack of SOPs, the lack of having real skilled individuals that will basically could help elevate whether it's through cross steering techniques. There's so many different techniques that could be utilized to achieve the the maximum efficiency of what we're producing. But unfortunately, we're basically enabling the bad actors to basically do what they do best, which is produce cannabis that we do not want on the market. It lacks diversity. It lacks everything you could possibly do. There's a reason why there's numbers in declining in terms of medical cannabis card patient holding, and then also the declining of return service. And it's mainly because that we're taking the easy route, and then unfortunately we're not producing a product that basically that is within the competitive spectrum. So I think the
Sir,
power
that's
is
your
in your
time.
hands.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we have no additional public comment.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So the next item on our agenda is a presentation by subject matter experts, and we actually only have one joining us this morning, and we spoke about it at the last meeting. Her name is Rachel Gillette. Rachel helps clients nationwide proactively plan and implement strategies to capitalize on strategic business opportunities. At the vanguard of the marijuana industry, Rachel leverages more than a decade of experience guiding clients to establish, expand, and protect profitable businesses in a rapidly evolving legal, regulatory, and financial environment. From years of interacting with regulators and taxing authorities, Rachel knows how state and local provisions will be applied in practice and what clients can anticipate at every step of the licensing process and beyond. She vigorously protects clients' interests in tax audits and deficiency assessments at the state and local level, as well as IRC Section 280E adjustments. Clients value Rachel's ability to distill complex, often overwhelming information into a prioritized plan of action. As a strategic advisor, she helps clients prepare and get positioned to seize opportunities like starting operations in newly legalized states, scale businesses into multiple jurisdictions, or launch new brands and products. Rachel's clients range from individual entrepreneurs and investors to startups to publicly traded companies with operations in one or multiple states in cannabis and cannabis adjacent businesses. Domestic and international entities exploring cannabis business opportunities turn to Rachel for pragmatic, industry savvy counsel as they evaluate potential options. Rachel also serves as an expert witness on legal and regulatory issues involving hemp, marijuana, CBD, and other cannabinoids. Before she joined Holland & Hart, she's currently a partner at Holland & Hart. Rachel was a partner at Greenspoon Martyr, serving as chair of the firm's cannabis law practice and as a member of the management committee. And Rachel is joining us this morning. Good morning, Rachel. Thank you again for taking the time to attend our meeting this morning and speak to the public and our subcommittee as a whole.
Hi, good morning. I don't have a presentation per se, but what I can tell you is that I have, my understanding was that I was to be here to discuss the potential implications from a tax standpoint of descheduling or rescheduling cannabis. So I am more than happy to answer any questions you may have on that matter. I do have over 17 years of experience interacting with local, state, and federal tax authorities. I also represent cannabis businesses in tax audits as well as in U.S. tax court. And like I said, I am happy to answer any questions you may have because I understand you're drafting a report regarding the descheduling or rescheduling of cannabis. And so please let me know anything that you need to know about or any questions you may have. I can tell you generally, there's a proposal, I guess, or a recommendation by the HHS to reschedule cannabis to Schedule 3. And that does have certainly some benefits for the industry in that if it is rescheduled to a Schedule 3 controlled substance, then the provision of the tax code, the federal provision of the tax code, which is known as IRC 280E, will no longer apply to cannabis businesses because that specifically only applies to businesses that are trafficking in Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 controlled substances. So that will be quite helpful, I think, generally. I also think it may impact the black market to some extent by diminishing the black market because cannabis businesses may be able to compete better if they're no longer subject to federal punitive taxation. So it may help in states that don't have provisions which allow for state cannabis business tax deductions, but I don't believe that Nevada is one of those states. So happy to answer any questions you may have, if you have any, presuming you have any.
Yeah, I think Shally has some questions. I myself also have some questions, but I'm going to let Shally ask her questions first.
Sure.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you for being here today and being willing to answer our questions. I've done a little bit of research on the subject, and I wanted to get your opinion on some of the things that I came across. So I know that you mentioned Section 280E would no longer apply, and so cannabis businesses could then deduct some of their ordinary and necessary business expenses, such as advertising, rent, utility costs, payroll, payments to contractors, travel, insurance, equipment maintenance and repair, business mileage, and then other various business expenses. So if a cannabis business has already paid those taxes in a previous year, will those taxes likely be refunded from the federal government? Do you foresee it being retroactive in any way?
So that is a great question, and it's a question I get a lot. So it could be retroactive, but it's probably not going to be retroactive. The way it could be retroactive is if there was some kind of court outcome which ruled that 280E was unconstitutional, and there are cases that are working their way through tax court and other courts which are taking the position that 280E or the application of 280E is unconstitutional. So there's a possibility. I think it's probably more unlikely than likely that it will be retroactive. Obviously, Congress could pass some legislation which could allow it to be retroactive. I don't necessarily envision that happening either, but it's possible. So those are the two ways that it would be retroactive. If it is rescheduled to Schedule 3 or descheduled off the list of controlled substances, then cannabis would no longer be subject to 280E from that point forward. And so the question becomes, what happens if that occurs in the middle of the year? For example, how does a business that has a tax calendar year from January to December deal with 280E. So there are some unknowns, but if the DEA moves to reschedule cannabis to Schedule 3 as of the date of that occurring, 280E would no longer apply. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yeah.
And kind of a follow-up to that, I was reading about if a cannabis business had a net operating loss from prior years. Do you see that being able to carry forward?
I do, actually. I mean, they should be subject to the same tax, rules as any other business and accounting standards. So, that's more of an accounting question based on the company's business and what they've claimed in previous years, et cetera. But yeah, that shouldn't be an issue. And they should be able to take all of their ordinary and necessary business deductions, should be able to file a tax return just as if they were any other business, which will be very beneficial to the industry as a whole, I believe. And it will allow them to be more profitable. And also, there are cannabis businesses, I think, generally think very carefully about their expenditures in light of 280E. And that is because, every expense is a possible disallowed expense because of 280E. So, a lot of my clients and other cannabis business owners have told me that, they're going to be looking at what the expense is, considering that it may cost them an extra 35% because it's going to be taxed as income, and then deciding whether to go forward with that. One of the benefits, I think, of the elimination of 280E for the industry will certainly be in the area of employee benefits, because even though the federal government encourages employee benefits, believe it or not, because of 280E, a lot of those costs could be a disallowed expense, or a proportion of them could be a disallowed expense. So it really disincentivizes businesses from offering those types of benefits to their employees. So I do think it will be very good, and cannabis businesses will be able to make decisions in a more normalized environment than having to always consider whether or not the expense is going to be considered income to them.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. One other thing that I came across also was if it is rescheduled or descheduled, I guess, there is a possibility that it could be subject to a federal cannabis excise tax. Do you foresee something like that occurring? And how do you think it would impact, I guess, Nevada industry?
Yeah, what is sort of unknown is if it is rescheduled or descheduled, what does federal legalization look like? And there have been some bills that have been proposed, which would put the regulation of cannabis federally under different departments like alcohol and tobacco, or the FDA. I'm sure the FDA will have some regulation of cannabis as a Schedule 3 controlled substance. So I do expect there to be some amount of federal regulation that is more than what currently exists, because right now, as it's Schedule 1 status, the FDA doesn't even want to deal with cannabis, much less hemp, even today. So I do envision there being some sort of tax at the federal level, but I think this is a good question, because I think, what level of taxation can really impact the industry, but not only that, it also impacts whether or not there continues to be a black market in cannabis. Because if consumers are paying too much tax, or businesses are paying too much tax, and then thereby having to pass on those, those costs to the consumer, then the price of cannabis can't compete with the black market. So, it's hard to say exactly what has happened, but I do think that one of the reasons the black market still exists is not because states haven't made a valiant effort to regulate and allow people to come into the legal marketplace that have been, participating in other ways, but because of taxation, also 280E, also regulations. So, I think having it sort of more normalized at the federal level, or having some acknowledgement by the federal government that there isn't going to be criminal enforcement tomorrow is going to really, really help with all of those things. So, and my hope is that the impact will also be a further diminishment of the black market, because then businesses will be able to compete better than they can now, unfortunately, because of all the costs associated with being a legal business.
Thank you. I just have one last question. And this is more if cannabis would be descheduled. How do you see that affecting taxes if cannabis can be sold across state lines?
That is a great question. I'm not sure. I think states may have to, and regulatory authorities or legislators may have to look sort of at the way cannabis is taxed and determine if it's appropriate and whether there should be different taxes for intrastate versus interstate sales. But that is a really, really interesting question. But I certainly think it is something that states are going to have to consider in light of potential federal legalization. Because, the potential is that you'll enter into some kind of agreement with another state and be able to, have licensed businesses in different states do business with each other. And so what does that look like from a taxation standpoint? So I do think that is something that states need to be considering and probably planning for. I don't think that rescheduling to Schedule 3 necessarily automatically allows the interstate sale of cannabis. And bear in mind that rescheduling cannabis to Schedule 3, all of the laws that are in conflict currently between state and federal laws are going to remain in conflict. So I do think there's going to be some adjustments that probably have to be made. And I think the question that we don't know the answer to is whether or not the federal government will issue some sort of, proclamation, or Congress will pass some law which then explicitly allows for interstate sales of cannabis specifically. Because currently almost every state has a prohibition on out-of-state sales. So I do think that those are laws that will also need to be addressed. And then obviously the how does tax work in that respect? So it's a very, very good question.
Well, thank you, Rachel. That was all my questions for you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a question, Rachel. You mentioned when you were kind of first starting off that Nevada's not a state that has tax credits or deductions. Have you seen that in other states where cannabis is legalized? And if so, which states, and what kind of credit or deductions do they get?
So my understanding was that Nevada businesses aren't subject to the equivalent of 280E, but I could be wrong. Mitch, you would probably know. But in Colorado, for example, we have what's called, a lot of states say whatever is the bottom line on your federal tax return is the income your tax, or sorry, on your federal tax return is that amount is subject to income tax on your state return. So they follow whatever is filed at the federal level. But most states have passed legislation in light of legalization, which allows for businesses that are legal under state law to not be subject to the taxation on their disallowed expenses that are reported on their federal tax return at the state level. And I thought that Nevada was one of those states. In Colorado, we call it the marijuana business tax credit. So anything that is a disallowed expense that's reported as income on your federal tax return is then adjusted out of the income on your state tax return. So the effect of it is that state-wise, they are not subject to tax on income for disallowed expenses that are subject to 280E. Does that make sense, Ashley?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I was just trying to understand what you meant by that comment. So yes, I appreciate that.
Yeah, but there are other, tax credit programs and things like that, potentially cannabis businesses have either been explicitly excluded from or could be included in, things that incentivize businesses to get set up in the state and things like that. I mean, I don't see any reason cannabis businesses should be on a state level should be treated any differently than any other business, in my opinion. But
is there any particular state that really stands out in your mind as kind of ahead when it comes to, I'm saying on a state tax level, as kind of like a model for other states to look at?
So some states stand out as being overly complicated and then having to go back and change what they've done. An example of that is California, which just made sort of the tax regime was very complicated. People didn't understand it. Distributors were meant to collect the excise tax, but they weren't being paid. And so they're getting assessed. And it just got very complicated. So they had to go back and sort of fix or make it, I guess, simpler. I did hear of one state, and I think it might be Missouri, but I'd have to double check. We were just talking about this past week, where there's just like a basic flat tax of across the board. So, and I think, tax, the application or the imposition of tax generally should be not so complicated that your normal business owner can't understand how to comply, because that just causes good intentions, bad outcomes. People end up underpaying, or the state has to continuously audit, etc. And so I do think a simplified tax regime can be very beneficial to both the state and the taxpayer. So I would probably recommend not trying to be overly complicated, and then just keeping in mind what the cost, what it looks like from the consumer perspective, because again, the goal of legalizing cannabis from a state perspective and federally is to kind of eliminate that black market and the unregulated sale of cannabis. And that's good for consumer safety and everything else. But we also have to understand that people are sensitive about cost. And so if taxes are too high, ultimately, they're going to go to the guy, their neighbor or whoever, and they're not, the state's not going to be collecting those tax dollars. So I think it's a real balance that you have to strike. But I also think that, something that is easy to comply with, that the taxpayers can understand and is beneficial as well.
Do you have an opinion, Rachel, on a potency tax? I know there's a couple. I know of at least one state, I think it's New York, that has bases their tax on the potency of the cannabis. Do you have an opinion on that, or no opinion at all?
Yeah, I think the goal of a potency tax is based on like a consumer safety idea. I don't particularly think a potency tax will necessarily work, and I think it's somewhat complicated as well. Because the idea is that the tax is higher, the higher the potency, right? Is that the New York model? I'm just curious because there's been a different ideas of potency tax floated, and the maybe it will incentivize people to grow less potent cannabis.
Or inflate the THC. I think
or
is
inflate the THC, which okay, I can understand that consideration. Yeah, I'm not sure that is something that is necessary. I certainly don't think it's necessarily going to prevent a consumer from buying high potency THC or prevent a business from growing the best cannabis that they can possibly grow. And not only that, I mean, what I do know is that I don't think there should be restrictions on potency, because I just think nature is nature, and it's very hard to control sometimes, especially with a plant like cannabis. So I'm not sure that is something that I would recommend. But I haven't had too much experience with a potency tax. I don't think a lot of states have actually gone down that road of a potency tax for various reasons. So like I said, I think maybe keeping it simple. I certainly don't think it's going to prevent people from seeking out high potency THC, if that's the goal of the tax.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm not sure if New York still has the potency tax. I just know when they originally legalized, they imposed a potency tax, but that may have changed.
Yeah, I think Washington State actually did like a feasibility study on a potency tax. It's called it's by, the author's name is Prieger, Prieger, and it's called Cannabis Potency Tax Feasibility Study, a report for the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board. And apparently the outcome was there's not enough data on a potency-based taxation system to recommend its implementation. And so they found that any change in the tax structure would require embracing large known costs and additional unknown costs in exchange for unknown benefits. So I don't know if it's been further studied. I don't think it actually has. That took place in 2019. And then I'm also looking at another study, which was in 2019. There was a report in California analyzing 4 different types of taxation models, which was percentage of price, weight-based, potency-based, or tiered ad valorem taxes. And so let me see if I could, and this report suggested that if the legislator prioritized reducing the illicit market, it could impose a rate closer to the lower end of its range. That's interesting. So I think there's some studies out there, and I'm certainly happy to try to find them for you and send them over.
Yeah, we'd appreciate anything you'd like to send over so we can look at it.
Sure.
Well, that's all the questions I had for Rachel. I'm not sure if any of the other members on the subcommittee had any questions for her. I'm not seeing any hands or hearing from anyone. So that concludes our discussion with you today, Rachel. Thank you again for taking time to come speak with us. And thank you, Member Britton, for coordinating.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you, Rachel.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on in our agenda to item 3, consideration for approval of the November 17th, 2023 rescheduling, descheduling subcommittee meeting minutes. Did all the members have, well, the members that are in attendance have an opportunity to review those minutes?
I had an opportunity.
I did as well.
Member Bertolo, did you have an opportunity? I did not hear Member Bertolo's response.
Yes, I reviewed them. Sorry, my mic turned itself off.
That's okay. Okay, thank you. I'm glad everybody had an opportunity. I myself also reviewed them. I did find a few typos that I'd like to point out. On the first page, it says federal rescheduling. It should say /descheduling subcommittee. I also wanted to point out that it should say that also in the second sentence under meeting minutes, November 17, 2023, same correction. And then when you scroll, when you get lower down, it says Chair Balducci called the meeting to order at 11:04 p.m. It should be a.m. So those are my proposed changes on page 1. On page 2, it appears to be missing a word in paragraph 2. It says Chair Balducci also asked Mr. Stewart about the potential effects would be. I believe there should be a what between about and the, about what the potential effects would be. And then on the 4th page, at the very end, it says adjournment at 11:47 p.m. It should be 11:47 a.m. So those are my proposed changes. Did any of the other subcommittee members have any others? Hearing none, I'm going to move on and see if there's a motion to approve the November 17th, 2023 minutes, subject to the recommended changes provided by me on pages 1, 2, and 4.
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Hearing a second. All in approval, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none. The November 17th, 2023 rescheduling, descheduling subcommittee meeting minutes have been approved. Motion shall pass, I guess, is more appropriate. All right, moving on to item number 4, future meetings. We've already discussed that we want to have another meeting in January and February, and the hope is that we have a draft report to discuss during the January meeting, and the February meeting is intended to be the final meeting where we would vote on it and the recommendations. And so I just want to make sure everybody was still on board with that timeline, and we'll make sure to coordinate so that all members can be in attendance for those 2 meetings. Does that sound good?
That works for me.
Me too.
It's great.
Alrighty, that moves us to the next item on the agenda. Agenda item 5, public comment.
You wish to provide public comment, click the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen if joining by Zoom. If joining by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. As a reminder, public comment is limited to 3 minutes and you will receive a 30-second warning. Okay. Catrice Saunders, go ahead.
Hi. Hello, thank you. Catrice Saunders for Public Record. I also wanted to reiterate on the rad source technology in this. I actually spoke to the rad source people yesterday, and they said people are buying it so they can use it to remediate it from not growing properly. So that needs to be at the forefront of the conversation, because I don't want to look down the line that we're poisoning patients unnecessarily because people aren't growing properly and they're just paying people off and buying equipment to get away with it. That should be criminal, and it is criminal. That's all I wanted to say, as well as I appreciate everyone putting this together, and have a great day.
Abad Pisa, go ahead.
Abad Pisa for the record. Something that I did want to bring up is that hopelessness takes on many forms. Recently, we had a kid get killed by a group of other kids, and I don't know the reason why, really into it. I didn't really look into it, but to me, hopelessness takes on many different forms. Things have been getting more violent, not just with kids, but also with the adults. Recently, they allowed vendors to be able to sell in front of their house, which I thought was something that was amazing that this governor, I think his name is Sandoval, I forgot his name right now. Again, I'm sick, so my head's a little foggy, but allowing people to do business is what allows them to dream. That's what America is supposed to be about, the American dream and all this stuff. But it seems like there's been a lot of favoritism. If you don't have the right attorney, you're not going to get the license. And that to me is also criminal, because you're lying to people, telling them that they have an opportunity or a chance, and it's not true. I know several people who applied. I know several people who submitted applications and never even got the opportunity to do something. So to me is make this like any other business, where if you want to apply, you should be able to apply, you pay your fees, and you can start your business, I don't really know how else to put it, other than all of this seems really, really wrong in the fact that people aren't able to do business in the manner that every other business is able to get started. It just doesn't seem right. Thank you.
There's no additional public comment.
All right, thank you, Sarah, and thank you for everyone who attended today's meeting. We appreciate it. Moving on to item 6, adjournment. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.